Welcome to Text Transformation with Red. This will be a video series where we will be learning how to work with the Red programming language, and more specifically how to work with the parse dialect in order to transform text, just like the title says. So the reason why I'm doing this series is because I think there's a need to put Red and parse a bit more out there. And although there are a number of very good written tutorials with varying degrees of complexity and detail, there is a bit of a gap I find with video tutorials. So this is where this idea came from, is that I'm currently working on a project. I have a particular use case, and I thought it would be interesting to put it out there, take videos as I'm working through it, so that others can also learn, number one, about the Red programming language, and number two, how great the parse functionality is that is available with working with Red. Now, what are we going to be building together is we're going to be building a custom markup language, and have the ability to generate various targets. So for example, we'll be able to generate HTML document, we'll be able to generate an XML document, maybe some docbook, latex, maybe trough. It all depends what your use case is. For myself, I'll be focusing specifically on HTML and trough. This is what my needs are. And all using the same syntax. Some of the features we'll have in this project are, the basics, the usual suspects: numbered headings, unnumbered headings, lists, figures, and tables, code blocks. Code blocks will have some keyword highlighting for a variety of different programming languages. We'll have some comments in there. And the way we'll be doing this is we'll just be starting off with the most simple use case, and then work progressively into adding more and more features. So for example, for tables, one thing I'd like to have there is some additional properties to have a bit more flexibility in how tables are structured. For example, row and column spanning and different styling options. So who am I? Well, actually, before I head into that, let me just show you what this markup language will look like and some of the results. So actually, this page here that we're looking at, this was generated with what we will be building. This is the HTML output. As you can see, there are numbered headings, unnumbered headings, lists, etc. And the input file for that was just plain text. As you can see here, the syntax I'm using for numbered headings is the markdown syntax. For unnumbered headings here, I have a different syntax for that. For lists, this is the syntax I'm currently working with, etc. For another example, this is another document that was generated. So you can see here examples of code blocks with keyword highlighting, or bolded keywords, I should say. And here I have examples of this feature for different languages. So what you see here, this is an example of the markup of what we will be building. Down here we have an example of the Red programming language, some of its keyword. I'll move down a bit more to show you, excuse me, show you some more interesting features. This is an example of a table where you can see there's column spanning. I also have some different text alignment in there and some table styling, some table captions, as well as figures with captions, etc. And here we'll have a look at the input file for that. I'll just show you the last part here, the more interesting part, the more complex part. Here we have a table with a width of 50% and collapsed borders. And then the first column, as you saw in the example, is spanning 2 columns. And down here we have in the other row text alignment, different text alignment features. This is the syntax for the caption. As you can see, it's a very natural syntax. And as well for the figure that you see down at the bottom here. Again, very natural syntax, figure 2.3, etc. So this is an example of what we will be building. The syntax is quite arbitrary. I am also learning how to work with the parsing feature. So I'm just learning as I'm going. We may decide to change the syntax as we are going along. It all depends. As I'm learning more and more, I'm figuring out how to do things simpler, better, more efficiently, and that has an impact on how I am designing the solution. So who am I? I am a business analyst in my day job. I do not do development. I'm not a developer. In fact, this is probably the only project where I'm actually doing programming. So that gives you an idea of my current level of proficiency at programming. Just a caveat that I did a number of years ago do a computer science diploma program in college. I graduated in 2002, and to be honest, I haven't done any kind of programming in my professional work. So that gives you an idea of my level. I am aware of programming. I know about programming concepts. Being a business analyst in my day job does gives me some other skills such as analytical thinking, how to design things, thinking things through, and things like that, which are all skills that are all useful contributions when you are going to be working any type of development project. Who are you? You are someone who has some kind of knowledge of programming. Um, and I'm hoping that you have some knowledge of Red or Rebel, or else you might be a bit lost. If you don't, I highly recommend that you explore Red a little bit on your own, just to understand what we'll be working with. Because the focus of this series is not going to be teaching you, Red programming from the ground up. I'm making the assumption that you know what a function is, you know what parameters are, you know about scope, things like that, the basics. What I'm trying to focus more on is the parsing dialect, and specifically how to transform text, how to take as input a string, and seek out patterns in it, extract information from it, to then transform it into something else. So in this case, we are taking in a text file. It has some markup tags in it, has some patterns, and we'll be using the parse dialect to seek and find those patterns and extract certain information from it that will then allow us to create an intermediate representation of our data, something similar to an abstract syntax tree, which then we will be able to execute as a program, which is another very interesting feature of Red and Rebel, which we'll go into a bit more detail later on. And why are we building this? Is that, well, as I just mentioned, is to help us learn about the parsing dialect, the parsing feature, which, in my opinion, is incomparable to whatever other languages have. It's very unique and it's quite powerful. Um, but at first, it kind of seems like a black box, like a lot of magic stuff is happening under the hood. It certainly was for me. And to be honest, it kept me away from using it for a long time because I just wasn't understanding how it was working. And so initially for this particular project, I started off, doing, trying to write my own scanner, recursive descent parser. I've tried different approaches, trying to, create objects and things that I've learned along the way. Um, if you have some kind of awareness or have studied, programming languages, parsers, scanners, and this and that, you know what I'm talking about. And for a while, this is how I was approaching things. I thought to myself, you know what, I have this idea I want to do, and I think that the way that I need to do it is I have to, I want to create my own programming language. But at the end of the day, taking a step back, um, that is not actually what I needed to do. What I needed, or what I was trying to do, was take some text and transform it into some other representation, some other output. And although you can definitely write your own programming language to do that, it's a lot of work. And if all you're interested in is um, transforming text or data from one format to another, it may not be necessary for you to actually write your own programming language. And this is where I think Red and Ribble particularly shine. This is one of their strengths, is that if you understand how the parse dialect works, it puts a lot of power in your hands, and at the end of the day, will save you a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into whatever project you're working on, especially if it involves working and manipulating data, um, transforming input into some other format to do something else with it, data analysis, parsing, and stuff that you just wouldn't want to tackle with regular expressions, or trying to build your own parser and scanner from scratch. Is just, it's a lot of overkill. Once you understand how the parse dialect works, it gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of creativity to explore your own ideas, and it allows you to do so very quickly. For example, the syntax that I'm using for this particular project is basically for us to learn together how to use the parse dialect, how to work with it, how to do different things with it. But certainly, if you're not, um, if the syntax doesn't resonate with you, or you have a very different use case, that's fine. Once we go through the series, you'll hopefully have the understanding to create your own syntax, your own markup, or whatever it is that you are interested in doing, and put it to use for your own use case. So this wraps it up for the introduction. In the next series, we will be diving right into starting to build this thing. As you'll see, we'll be starting with a blank file, and together we'll explore um, how to put parse to work for us. See you next time.